Hello and welcome live to New Delhi. You're watching DD India NewsHour, India's voice to the world. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next hour, India handled inflation much better than US, Germany and France, says an SBI report, credits the government's initiatives, the RBI and banks. Jammu and Kashmir Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha speaks exclusively to DD India ahead of the regional elections, says the Union Territory's economy has doubled in recent years. US State Department sanctions a Chinese research institute and several companies charged with supplying Pakistan's ballistic missile program. Vladimir Putin warns NATO, says allowing Ukraine to use Western-supplied long-range missiles to hit targets deep inside Russia would mean the military bloc is at war with Moscow. And former England manager and first foreign coach Sven-Goran Eriksson is laid to rest. David Beckham, among 600 mourners, paid tributes in his Swedish hometown, Torsby. The United States has imposed sanctions on a Chinese research institute and several companies it said have been involved in supplying Pakistan's ballistic missile program. China has lashed out against the move, but Pakistan has been mum about it. Its Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif has, however, expressed his gratitude to friendly nations in helping Islamabad meet tough International Monetary Fund conditions for its bailout. Take a look.
Pakistan has been skating on thin ice since 2022 due to a broad financial and economic crisis in the wake of COVID pandemic and the Ukraine conflict. Thursday saw its Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif saying friendly countries have played a major role in helping it meet the IMF conditions, which included arranging additional external financing and rolling over debt. Sharif didn't give more details, but officials say they're trying to arrange up to $2 billion to meet a financial gap.
Friendly countries, friendly and brotherly countries that are in close relations to us have fully helped us once again. They have come all the way.
It was also reported that the IMF board will be taking up Islamabad's $7 billion package for discussion on the 25th of this month. Pakistan's central bank cut its key policy rate by a bigger than expected 200 basis points to 17.5% on Thursday. It was the third straight reduction since June as the country looks to spur growth as inflation eased to single digits in August for the first time in nearly 3 years. While Pakistan is far from out of the woods economically, its political tribulations linger on. Former PM Imran Khan's Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party cancelled its nationwide protests on Friday against detention of its lawmakers from Parliament House. Pakistan's Punjab PTI acting president Hamad Azhar announced on Thursday that the Friday protest was postponed on the directions of party chief Imran Khan to make better preparations for a mega rally in Lahore on 22nd September. In further embarrassment for Pakistan, US State Department imposed sanctions on a Chinese research institute and several companies. It said these sanctions are being imposed because these entities and individuals knowingly transferred equipment and technology controlled under the Missile Technology Control Regime Annex in support of MTCR Category 1 missile programs to a non-MTCR country. Washington similarly targeted 3 China-based companies with sanctions in October 2023 for supplying missile-applicable items to Pakistan. The Chinese embassy in Washington protested, but the Pakistani mission remained silent. Bureau Report, DD India.
Baluchistan, Pakistan's restive southwestern region bordering Iran, is rich in minerals including gold. The China-Pakistan Economic Corridor and the Gwadar Port are Chinese investments in the region that are not well received by the locals. They believe the Pakistani government's use of Chinese resources gives the Chinese an unwanted hold over the region. More in this report.
Baluchistan is the largest province of Pakistan. It is rich in natural resources and has huge potential to boost the Pakistani economy. Baluchistan is known for its significant reserves of natural gas and coal. Large deposits of copper and gold are found particularly in the Robotic area. Hence, mining has significant potential. Wheat, barley and fruits are cultivated along with livestock amid the tribal lifestyle of its inhabitants. The coastal areas, especially around Gwadar, support a thriving fishing industry, and the Gwadar port is a strategic port and part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Despite these resources, Baluchistan remains underdeveloped compared to other parts of Pakistan and faces inadequate infrastructure and political instability. CPEC, said to have development commitments worth $65 billion as part of Chinese President Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. Pakistan has not been able to develop the infrastructure needed to tap mineral resources in the poverty-stricken Baluchistan and hence has sought China's help in developing the province. But the locals see the Chinese as a colonial force with exploitative interests that don't benefit the region. The Baloch Liberation Army, an armed secessionist group, took responsibility for an operation they called the Haruf, or the Dark Windy Storm, in late August that left 73 people dead. They were clearly against development projects that are part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor.
This incident has left its impact on business. The residents are scared to travel. I request the state of Pakistan to bring the situation to normal. It should sit down and hold talks with whichever groups are doing this and resolve the matter. A gun is not the solution to a problem.
As this Chinese-built plane takes to the skies at a land port on the China-Pakistan border in the Parmese region, it is clear that the Chinese authorities are banking on the potential success of the Belt and Road Initiative.
Non-financial direct investment from Chinese enterprise into countries participating in the BRI came in at $17.94 billion, up 7.7% year-on-year. The turnover of contracted overseas projects amounted to $86.28 billion.
While China seeks to make greater investments in the China-Pakistan economic corridor, the safety of those investments are subject to the perceptions the local people have of Chinese colonial intentions. The Economic Brief, DD India.
A close and unpredictable contest is on the cards in the Sri Lankan presidential elections on the 21st of this month. The first since the 2002 economic crisis, which plunged the South Asian island nation into political turmoil. The time allotted for sending in postal ballots by the Lankan poll authorities has ended now, and there's much anticipation building up towards polling day. Now, barely a week ahead of the voting, the Wickremesinghe government has tweaked personal income tax bans to ostensibly give relief to the middle class.
The polls scheduled for September 21 will be the first such elections after Sri Lanka spiraled out of control under an economic meltdown back in 2022, which led to mass protests and forced former President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee and resign. Ever since, the country has been trying to slowly inch its way back to recovery. In July 2022, Ranil Wickremesinghe was elected president through a parliamentary vote, and the government secured approximately $2.9 billion bailout from the International Monetary Fund. As the incumbent president seeks a re-election as an independent, he is challenged by opposition leader Sajith Premadasa from the Samagi Jana Balawegaya and Anura Kumara Dissanayake from the leftist alliance of National People's Power. While the leftist alliance is hopeful of performing better than previous instances due to increased traction among young voters who are frustrated by corruption and inspired by the 2022 protests, Dissanayake has advocated for economic freedom while promising welfare measures for the working class. The Tamil-dominated North and East will also be a crucial factor in these elections, with Pakiya Selavam, Arya Nethiran contesting as an independent candidate. In addition, the SLPP, which won the last election, has fielded Namal Rajapaksa, the 69-year-old former Batikalau, district MP, is contesting as a common Tamil presidential candidate. Experts believe that the common Tamil candidate, by contesting, will draw attention to the unresolved Tamil national question, both nationally and internationally. The postal voting, which took place over the past 4 days, concluded on the 12th of September without any major incident. Local media quoted the Department of Post saying that over 694,000 presidential postal ballot papers were received so far. Let's understand Sri Lanka's election process. Around 17.1 million people are eligible to vote, including 1 million first-time voters. Voting across 22 electoral districts, 56% of the voters are women. 38 candidates will be in the fray, the highest ever. Votes will be cast throughout the day on September 21. Results are expected the next day. Voters can select 3 candidates from the ballot paper. The first preferences will be counted first. Candidate with over 50% of the valid votes will be the winner. If there is no clear winner, the first 2 candidates will be retained and their ballots will be counted again. What are the key issues of the elections? IMF deal has been a key area of discussion. Corruption has been a major issue under the previous regime, ethnic issue for Tamil voters, and the implementation of the 13th Amendment. The 13th Amendment oversees decentralization of power to provincial councils. With the upcoming presidential elections, Sri Lankans expect development in their country's economy, more transparency in their governance, and decline in poverty levels. Bureau Report, DD India.
For more on the upcoming presidential elections in Sri Lanka, which is just over a week away, we're joined live by DD India's Moin Ahmed Faruqi. Now, good evening to you, Moin. Considering how Sri Lanka has been on a recovery path since the 2022 economic crisis, which toppled the dispensation at that time, how critical is the presidential election this time around?
Good evening, Gautam. Yes, you see the presidential elections in Sri Lanka are being held at a very crucial phase in the island nation. From the peak of the economic crisis that we saw 2 years ago to now, inflation is down from 70% to under 5%, interest rates are reduced, and the forex reserves are up. But, Sri Lanka is not yet completely out of the woods. The fragile condition of the economy exists even today. This economy, which relied primarily on tourism and apparel exports, it needs several measures to take the economy to sustainable levels. And this is where the challenge for the new government exists. The new government will have to manage to find ways to expand the GDP all the time with an eye on the debt that needs to be repaid from 2029. In fact, many have called this election a make or break moment when the people would choose who would be a better leader going forward.
And India has lent a major hand in righting Sri Lanka's ship during tough times. Now, would relations between India and Sri Lanka remain friendly regardless of who comes to power in Colombo, Moin?
Gautam, India-Sri Lanka relations have been growing from strength to strength over the past few years. Historically speaking, if we look at it, Buddhism, which is integral to Sri Lanka, is closely woven between the two countries, and so is Ramayana. Neighborhood first policy in recent times has generated tremendous goodwill in the region in general and Sri Lanka in particular. You're right, the assistance provided by India, which is worth $4.5 billion, it was very, very crucial. In fact, it is more than the IMF package of $2.9 billion. In addition, Indian investments have been tremendously useful in generating not only the revenue for Sri Lanka, also generating jobs for the locals. In addition, several development cooperation projects have been seen as a beacon of hope in the island. Currently, the joint vision document that was signed between the leaders of both countries in 2023 July, it's a positive step which will aid and guide the bilateral relations going forward. That said, irrespective of who wins the election, it is expected that the bilateral relations between the two countries will continue to remain on the same upward path. And that is how it is being expected also. Gautam.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us from Colombo, Dr. Ahmed Moin Faruqi with the latest now. Still to come on DD India NewsHour. US President Joe Biden is to host the 4th in-person Quad Leaders Summit at his Delaware residence next weekend. European and Islamic nations meet in Spain, eyeing a schedule for Palestinian statehood. And the World Health Organization clears Bavarian Nordic's Mpox vaccine. It becomes the first WHO-approved vaccine aimed to curb the Mpox virus.
that it is our own unsustainable human activity that is the biggest threat for our planet. So what can we as individuals do to save and preserve our ecosystems?
We provide a bridge between nature and our urban environment.
When we started rescuing an animal on field, or you're bringing the animal into the rescue center where it undergoes rehabilitation and then is reintroduced back to the wild.
It's very important that they understand the journey they're about to take on, which is tree planting. So this particular pencil, for it has seeds inside, and they're using it to study, but at the end of the day it's going to translate into a tree. A tree was cut and a tree is going to be planted.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. Now, after a blockbuster face-off between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris in Philadelphia 2 nights ago, and Fox News is offered to host another one, Trump has ruled out the possibility of a third presidential debate, saying he's already won 2, one against his current opponent and the other against former opponent Joe Biden. But is Trump ducking out of debating Harris because of the poll numbers which came out after the much-anticipated primetime clash? Take a look.
Confident after gaining a clear edge in Tuesday's presidential debate in Philadelphia, Democratic presidential candidate Kamala Harris is yearning for another showdown with Donald Trump. Harris's confidence is also buoyed by the fact that many influential names associated with Donald Trump in the past have jumped the ship.
Over 200 people who worked for President George H.W. Bush, President George W. Bush, John McCain, and Mitt Romney have endorsed me for president. 2 nights ago, Donald Trump and I had our first debate. And I believe we owe it to the voters to have another debate.
Trump is putting up a brave face. He has already declared victory in the ABC News debate. Now, McDonald's has become an unlikely new battleground as Team Trump has demanded evidence to prove Harris's claim that she worked at the popular fast food chain while in college.
She worked at McDonald's and she was working so hard. There's only one problem. She didn't work at McDonald's. She's a liar. Liar. As everyone saw 2 nights ago, we had a monumental victory over Comrade Kamala Harris in the presidential debate. So because we've done 2 debates and because they were successful, there will be no third debate.
Observers feel that Trump might have reservations confronting Harris again because the post-debate polls have put Harris on front foot. According to the poll, Kamala Harris leads Republican Donald Trump 47% to 42% for November 5 polls. Nevertheless, the next pit stop in this high-octane presidential campaign is supposed to be on 1st of October when vice presidential running mates, Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Republican Senator J.D. Vance will square off against each other on CBS News. Akhilesh Suman's report for DD India.
And President Joe Biden will be hosting the 4th in-person Quad Leaders Summit in his hometown, Wilmington, Delaware on the 21st of this month. The summit comes as Biden eyes his foreign policy legacy in his final month as a one-term president after dropping out of the 2024 U.S. elections and effectively handing the Democratic Party nomination to his Vice President Kamala Harris. White House spokesperson said the president is looking forward to welcoming Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese and Prime Minister Kishida Fumio of Japan. The Quad Leaders Summit will focus on bolstering the strategic convergence on the Indo-Pacific and delivering concrete benefits in health security, natural disaster response, maritime security, high-quality infrastructure, critical and emerging technologies, climate and clean energy and cybersecurity. The White House said that India will be hosting the next Quad Summit.
This administration, President Biden made the decision to take the Quad to the leader level, and next weekend, President Biden will host the 4th in-person Quad Leader Summit in Wilmington, Delaware. The President looks forward to welcoming Prime Minister of Australia, Prime Minister of India, and the Prime Minister of Japan. This will be President Biden's first time hosting foreign leaders in Wilmington as president, a reflection of his deep personal relationships with each of the Quad leaders and the importance of the Quad to all of our countries.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer visited the British Embassy in Washington on Friday ahead of talks with US President Joe Biden on the next steps in supporting Ukraine, centering on whether to allow Western missiles to be used to hit targets in Russia. Joined by Foreign Secretary David Lammy, Starmer met with Karen Pierce, the British ambassador to the US, at the embassy. The leaders will also have an in-depth discussion on a range of global issues of mutual interest, including continuing robust support to Ukraine, securing a hostage release and ceasefire deal to end the Gaza conflict, protecting international shipping in the Red Sea from Houthi threats, and advancing a free and open Indo-Pacific. Boeing's US West Coast factory workers will walk off the job after 96% voted on Thursday in favor of a strike, halting production of the strongest selling jet amid chronic output delays and increasing debt. The workers' first strike since 2008 will start at midnight Pacific time on Friday. At least two-thirds of the unionized workers had to vote in favor of a strike under complicated rules set by the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. Earlier, Boeing CEO Kelly Ortberg sent a letter to workers urging them to approve the deal, which included a general wage increase of 25%, a $3,000 signing bonus, and a pledge to build Boeing's next commercial jet in the Seattle area. TikTok and parent company ByteDance face a key court hearing on Monday in a legal battle seeking to block a law that could ban the app used by 170 million Americans as soon as the 19th of January. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia will hold oral arguments on the legal challenge, putting the fate of Chinese-owned TikTok in the middle of the final weeks of the 2024 presidential election. Both Republican presidential candidate Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are active on TikTok seeking to court young voters. TikTok and ByteDance argue the law is unconstitutional and violates Americans' free speech rights. Russian President Vladimir Putin has delivered a clear message to the West about the consequences it will face if it allows Ukraine to hit Russian territory with Western long-range missiles. Putin said on Thursday that the West would be directly fighting with Russia if it allowed Ukraine to strike Russian territory with Western-made long-range missiles. A move, he said, would alter the nature and scope of the conflict. Here's more in this report.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has drawn a new red line on long-range missiles that Western countries have provided Ukraine in the fight against Russia. Talking to Russian state TV, Putin said that the West would be directly fighting with Russia if it allowed Ukraine to strike Russian territory with Western-made long-range missiles, a move, he said, would alter the nature and scope of the conflict.
It is not about allowing the Ukrainian regime to strike Russia with these weapons or not. It is about making a decision about whether NATO countries are directly involved in the military conflict or not. If this decision is made, it will mean nothing less than the direct participation of NATO countries, the United States and the European country in the war in Ukraine. This is their direct participation, and this, of course, significantly changed the very essence, the very nature of the conflict.
Putin said that in such a move, satellite targeting data and programming of the missile flight paths would have to be provided by NATO military personnel, as Kiev did not have the capabilities itself. And in that case, the Kremlin would be forced to make appropriate decisions based on the new threats.
This will mean that NATO countries, the United States and European countries are fighting Russia. And if this is so, then bearing in mind the change in the very essence of this conflict, we will make appropriate decisions based on the threats that will be created for us.
Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has been pleading with Kiev's allies for months to let Ukraine fire Western missiles deep into Russian territory to limit Moscow's ability to launch attacks. On Wednesday, US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken and his British counterpart David Lammy met with top leaders of Ukraine in Kiev and discussed bolstering the Ukrainian military and whether to allow it to use imported long-range missiles to strike deep into Russia. And as per media reports, the White House is finalizing a plan to ease restrictions on Ukraine's use of US-donated weapons in battles against Russia. When asked if he would lift geographic restrictions on the use of these missiles, the US President Joe Biden told reporters, and I quote, "We're working that out right now," unquote. If this happens, it may change the course of the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Meanwhile, Russian forces have launched a significant counter-offensive against Ukrainian troops in the border region of Kursk, where Kiev launched a major incursion last month. Kiev said that Russian forces also made some advances in eastern Ukraine near the embattled town of Kurakhov on Friday. Raghav Kumar Jha's report for DD India.
Defense cooperation agreement in Berlin on Friday aimed at stationing up to 4,000 German troops on NATO's eastern flank in the Baltic country by the end of 2027. German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius said that the construction of the future German base began earlier this summer in a wooded area near Rudininkai, south of the capital Vilnius. Pistorius put the cost at around 4 to 6 billion euros for investments into the brigade and yearly expenditures for this brigade of just under 1 billion euros. Germany committed last year to station these troops in Lithuania, a country which borders the Russian enclave of Kaliningrad. Spain on Friday hosted a meeting bringing together ministers from Muslim and European countries to push forward a two-state solution for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. In attendance were his counterparts, including from Norway and Slovenia, European Union Foreign Policy Chief Joseph Borrell, Palestinian Prime Minister Mohammed Mustafa, and members of the Arab Islamic Contact Group from Gaza that includes Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Jordan, Indonesia, Nigeria and Turkey. On the 28th of May, Spain, Norway and Ireland formally recognized a unified Palestinian state ruled by the Palestinian Authority, comprising the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, with East Jerusalem as its capital. With them, 146 of the 193 member states of the United Nations now recognize Palestinian statehood. The World Health Organization has granted pre-qualification to Bavarian Nordic's Mpox vaccine, marking the first WHO-approved vaccine aimed at curbing the spread of the disease, particularly in heavily impacted African regions. The approval enables developing countries, which often lack the infrastructure for extensive vaccine safety and efficacy assessments, to access this vaccine. Bavarian Nordic's shot is cleared for immunization in adults aged 18 and older, offering protection against smallpox, Mpox and related orthopoxvirus infections. South Africa's president has signed contentious education legislation into law on Friday, angering his party's main coalition partner. Part of the bill gives the Education Department the power to approve school boards' language policies, which President Cyril Ramaphosa's African National Congress says will help prevent discrimination. The NC says that students are being excluded from some schools because of the language they speak, which it says has been used as a proxy for racial exclusion. Afrikaans was promoted by South Africa's white minority rulers under apartheid.
The signing of this bill marks an important step towards resolving long-standing challenges in our education system. It was President Nelson Mandela who said that it is not beyond our power to create a world in which all children have access to a good education.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour, we'll be speaking with our expert guest about the state of affairs in Pakistan, struggling with security, economic and political challenges. From floods in Austria, Nigeria, South Sudan and Myanmar to wildfires in southwestern France and Spain, we get you all the weather updates from across the globe. And Ozone World Day 2024 is celebrated in New Delhi with the theme Montreal Protocol advancing climate actions.
It is our own unsustainable human activity that is the biggest threat for our planet. So what can we as individuals do to save and preserve our ecosystems?
We provide a bridge between nature and our urban environment.
So when we started rescuing an animal on field, or you're bringing the animal into the rescue center where it undergoes rehabilitation and then is reintroduced back to the wild.
It's very important that they understand the journey they're about to take on, which is tree planting. So this particular pencil, for it has seeds inside, and they're using it to study, but at the end of the day, it's going to translate into a tree. A tree was cut, and a tree is going to be planted.
Welcome back. You're watching DDI NEWSHOUR. I'm Gautam Roy. And time now to talk about Pakistan with our special guest, because it does seem to be on a path to recovery where its economy is concerned, but it remains quite unstable, both security-wise as well as politically. We're joined by TCA Raghavan, former Indian High Commissioner to Pakistan. Good evening to you, Mr. Raghavan. What do you make of the fact that Pakistan on paper does seem to be recovering in a way? Inflation has been sort of reined in double digits now from the high of 40%. And now, of course, things looking up where the economy is concerned in terms of how its foreign reserves look as well. But do you think it's out of the woods now, or does it still need a lot of support from not just the IMF but from others too, which it really seems to be counting upon?
Well, terms such as recovery or out of the woods would be an overstatement at this stage. Yes, the immediate crisis was staved off because of the IMF package earlier, which was sanctioned. But the recovery, such as it is very fragile and is to a very great extent dependent on external financing, and most of all, external financing led by the IMF. Pakistan also has to do a great deal of heavy lifting with some of its principal economic partners to reschedule various debts which have now matured and are due for repayment. So I would say that while some amount of stabilization has taken place in the past few months, it has still a long way to go. And the economic situation will continue to worry the government of Pakistan a very great deal.
Right. And in that, what is happening with the political situation is again quite concerning, because again, if you look at how things are going with the opposition, or even with the situation in Baluchistan, the situation could erupt at any moment, and there's no effort on part of quote-unquote the Pakistani establishment to address it in a manner where things could be worked out.
You see, about 2 years ago, the term multipolar crisis or a plural crisis was used for Pakistan, and Pakistan continues to be in that state of comprehensive crisis. That crisis is, of course, economic, but it is also political, and as you mentioned, the intensity of the confrontation between the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf Party, led by former Prime Minister Imran Khan, who is in jail, and the government backed by the military. That confrontation has moved up by 2 or 3 notches over the past week. So there is this political crisis which is ongoing, and perhaps equally seriously, if not more seriously, is a national security crisis in the form of major terrorist attacks and a great deal of friction in Pakistan's relations with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, with the Taliban regime in Afghanistan itself, as also an insurgency in Baluchistan, which continues to flare up periodically with very damaging results.
Why do you think is the the ruling establishment, which also includes the armed forces, why aren't they making any efforts to address these problems and letting them fester? Because it seems that as long as it's not addressed politically through some sort of a process, just responding to it in a knee-jerk manner or militarily or putting people in jail, do you think that would help?
Well, clearly responding in a knee-jerk or piecemeal manner is not helping. But the fact is that Pakistan faces, most of all, a crisis of confidence and a crisis of fundamental lack of consensus among not just the political parties. That lack of consensus is there between the political parties, but there is also a lack of consensus between different stakeholders. The intensity of civil-military contestations, although these remain below the surface, those have gone up. There may well be some amount of disquiet within the military also, as is evidenced by the arrest of a former chief of the ISI, which has never happened before. And there are numerous tensions between the judiciary and the political parties, between the judiciary and the military. So, which is why people refer to a comprehensive crisis. And it is possibly beyond the competence of one party or the present government to find a comprehensive solution to all this. It's very difficult to answer why they cannot find the answers. But to a great extent, Pakistan's crisis has been endemic. And in some form, different crises have been there in Pakistan for a very long time.
Yes, it's almost endemic, and yet it keeps on finding backers. We've seen Shahbaz Sharif, heard him as well, that he's called these countries, apart from IMF, of course, there are these countries, including China, which have been lending a helping hand where Pakistan's dire straits are concerned. Why do these countries keep backing Pakistan?
Well, they back Pakistan because they value their bilateral relations with Pakistan. Pakistan is the fourth or fifth largest country in the world. It is situated in a very important location in geopolitical terms. It has nuclear weapons. So no country, no major power wants to see Pakistan go totally under. I mean, from our point of view, if you see it from an Indian point of view, we certainly don't want to see a civil war type of situation in Pakistan of the kind there is in Sudan, because in the end it is a neighbor. And if there is major and chronic instability in an immediate neighbor, that has very grave implications for us. So there is a certain compulsion amongst the international community that they have to continue to see that Pakistan does not go under, and to an extent this means helping it from time to time.
Right. Now, India has been very clear with its approach towards Pakistan with this government which took over in 2014, and since then, although an effort was made to reach out to Pakistan, it was not reciprocated. In fact, it was completely betrayed. And then ever since then, there's been virtually no engagement. Do you think that is something that will stay the course till Pakistan shows any sort of interest in changing its own ways?
Well, the general pattern of India-Pakistan relations has never been that relations remain static for a long period of time. The typical pattern of the relationship is that it has waves, that relations improve and then go into a crisis mode where they remain for some time, and then efforts are made to improve them again. Now, it is true since 2016, 2017, there has been a prolonged downturn in India-Pakistan relations. But at the same time, there have been major positive steps, such as the ceasefire on the line of control, such as the opening of the Kartarpur Sahib visa-free corridor. So it is not entirely a negative picture, but on the whole, relations have been at a very low level since 2017, 2018. There are different views about this. In my view, this is not a permanent state. I think the situation will change depending on our assessments of Pakistan and our assessments of Pakistan's future behavior. But nothing in diplomacy remains static or permanent. So one can expect that there will be initiatives depending on how the situation develops.
All right. Well, let's leave it there at the moment. Ambassador Raghavan, thank you so much for joining us to talk about it this evening.
Thank you.
Now let's take at some other stories making the news around the world as well. Saudi Arabia's King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center has successfully completed the world's first fully robotic heart transplant. The transplant operation was carried out on a 16-year-old patient suffering from end-stage heart failure. A high-level delegation from India's NASSCOM visited the UAE this week. The grouping country seeks market opportunities and investment prospects to enhance the presence of Indian technology industry in the region. A black bear and her cubs wandering around a residential area in New Jersey County in the United States was quite a sight. A home surveillance camera captured the bears walking across driveways in Walwick, a borough in Bergen County. Statistics showed there is an increase in black bear sightings of almost 30% in recent times. The State Bank of India's recent research report has revealed that India's inflation targeting mechanism has been more robust than that of developed economies, including the United States, Germany and France. The report lauds government initiatives, the RBI's regulatory measures and the banks for efficient inflation management. It is also highlighted that maintaining price stability was possible largely due to well-coordinated RBI monetary and government's fiscal policies. And news from the upcoming assembly elections to be held in the Indian Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir. Scrutiny of nominations will be held for the third phase of assembly polls in the North Indian Union Territory. The candidates can withdraw their nomination papers by or before the 17th of this month. As many as 483 candidates have filed their nomination papers across 40 assembly constituencies of 7 districts of Jammu and Kashmir. Polling for the third phase will be held on the 1st of next month, while polling for the first and second phases will be held on the 18th and 25th of September. India's province of Jammu and Kashmir is going to polls for the first time after the 2019 abrogation of its special status. DD India's Sakal Bhatt exclusively spoke with J&K Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha on the upcoming assembly elections, where he said the region has been completely transformed during the last 5 years. Listen in.
We are very honoured to have with us this election season here in the Union Territory of Jammu Kashmir, Honourable Lieutenant Governor Manoj Sinha ji. Let's quickly understand the significance of these polls, sir, especially these polls coming after a long gap of a decade and first after the abrogation of Article 370. Your thoughts?
Yeah, naturally, people were waiting for this election, and the voter turnout in Lok Sabha election, Parliament election was huge, and I think in last 35 years, this number of voters never turned around for voting. I hope in this assembly election, this percentage will increase. Jammu Kashmir people have reposed their faith in democracy and democratic values. Again, they will elect a good government which can deliver development, peace, prosperity in Jammu and Kashmir.
How do you see the transition from terror to peace, from pelting to peace and development in the valley, from stagnation to stability?
A transformational change has occurred in last 5 years, and I think people of Jammu and Kashmir has witnessed unprecedented development, tourism and peace. Prosperity also. The economy has just doubled in the last 4 or 5 years. Jammu Kashmir Bank is a testament. When I reached here, it was in loss of approximately 1100 crore. Now it's in profit of more than 1700 crore. The NPA was approximately 11%. Now it has reduced to 3.9%. Industrial investment is rising. Tourist influx has increased manifold. Agriculture and horticulture sector is taking a boom. And I think tourism has cut to size. And I am very sure that one day, very soon, people will realize that Jammu Kashmir is also like other UTs and states of.
There is, or perhaps there has been, a big transition from terror to transformation, and these elections in the Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir are mandated for a vote which is for development, and only development for New Kashmir, or the template of Naya Kashmir, post-abrogation of Article 370. With camera person Rahul Chopra, Sakal Bhatt reporting for DD India from Kashmir.
The world continues to feel the devastating impact of climate change, with extreme weather conditions taking a toll across several regions. From flash floods to wildfires, nations are grappling with the increasingly unpredictable and harsh climate and its vagaries. Here's a look at how various parts of the world have been coping.
World continues to feel the devastating impacts of climate change, with extreme weather conditions taking a toll across several regions. From flash floods to wildfires, countries are grappling with the increasingly unpredictable and harsh climate conditions. In India, the national capital New Delhi came to a standstill as monsoon rains triggered severe waterlogging on Friday. Streets were flooded, causing traffic slowdowns and making commuting a nightmare for many residents as they struggle to reach their workplaces.
The roads are usually waterlogged when it rains. It becomes troublesome to commute to my workplace. I cannot wear my shoes and I have to wade through the water. It becomes very difficult to commute.
In Vietnam's capital Hanoi, residents began clearing debris and mud after days of submerged streets. The waters receded as the sun finally broke through the clouds for the first time in days. Floods and landslides have also impacted parts of Laos, Thailand and Myanmar following the storm's deluge of rain last weekend.
At my house, all the tables and chairs and furnitures are damaged. My clothes and personal belongings are all gone. They all floated away in the flood waters.
Central European nations, including the Czech Republic, Poland, Austria, Germany, Slovakia and Hungary are on a high alert, bracing for severe flooding forecast to hit over the weekend. Firefighters in the Czech Republic are preparing for extreme rainfall, while Austrian authorities are focusing efforts near the German border, where heavy rains are expected to cause significant challenges.
Regarding the flooding situation, heavy rainfall so far, thank God, has not arrived yet. Current weather forecasts predict rainfall for the state of Salzburg from today until Sunday of 150 to 200 liters of rain per square meter. That should be the case. It would obviously lead to problems.
Meanwhile, in South America, wildfires are raging uncontrollably. From Brazil's Amazon rainforest to Bolivia's dry forests, setting a new record for the number of fires recorded in a year. Over in Europe, Spain's Catalonia is also battling wildfires, with 70 hectares of land scorched. Firefighters are working tirelessly, especially near the Serra de Montsant Natural Park, to control the flames. In contrast to this, no blanket at the mountains surrounding the Swiss town of Les de Blair, marking the season's first snowfall. While the snowfall is itself not unusual for this time of the year, warmer ground temperatures means the snow is expected to melt quickly. From floods to fires, these extreme weather conditions serve as a stark reminder of far-reaching consequences of climate change. As nations around the world battle against these forces of nature, the urgency to address and mitigate climate change has never been greater. The question remains, how much longer can we endure these extreme conditions before we take decisive global action?
The second International Conference on Green Hydrogen wrapped up on Friday, highlighting India's green energy transition. Minister Shripati Yesso Naik reaffirmed India's goal to achieve 50% non-fossil power capacity by 2030. Tapas Bhattacharya reports.
The second edition of the International Conference on Green Hydrogen has wrapped up, marking a significant milestone in India's energy transition journey. Held from September 11th to 13th and inaugurated by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the event attracted nearly 8,500 delegates, including over 3,000 young participants and students.
We have witnessed an extraordinary confluence of minds from across the globe, united in a common mission to advance the frontiers of green hydrogen technology. As we heard, the event was graced by a large number of national and international delegates, almost touching 8,000, involving all stakeholders, be it academicians, industry experts, startups, policymakers, and diplomats. And one of the key takeaways from this event is the understanding that international collaboration is not just beneficial, but essential.
Shripad Yesunaik, Minister of State for New and Renewable Energy, reaffirmed India's progress towards its goal of securing 50% of its power capacity from non-fossil sources by 2030, a pledge made under the 2015 Paris Agreement on Climate Change.
The National Green Hydrogen Mission, with an initial outlay of rupees 90,744 crores, stands as a testament to our resolve. It is a comprehensive strategy encompassing the demand creation, production, research and development, infrastructure, regulatory frameworks, international partnership, and most importantly, skill development and job creation.
The conference featured an impressive exhibition showcasing tech innovations in the green hydrogen sector, highlighting India's commitment to a cleaner and greener future. Taposh Bhattacharya's report for DD India.
The United Nations declared the 16th of September as the International Day for the Preservation of the Ozone Layer. This year's theme is Montreal Protocol, Advancing Climate Action. World Ozone Day provides an opportunity to celebrate and rally support for national compliance efforts among key stakeholders. So what is the current state of the ozone layer? Anil Thomas has the details.
World Ozone Day is celebrated on the 16th of September each year to commemorate the signing of the Montreal Protocol. This is an international environmental treaty for phasing out production and consumption of ozone-depleting substances that came into force in 1987. World Ozone Day is celebrated every year to spread awareness among people about the depletion of the ozone layer and the measures taken to preserve it.
India has done extremely well in terms of our commitment under the Montreal Protocol and the phase out of HCFCs, phase down of HFCs. So whatever the commitments we had made, we have already achieved them much in advance, and that is because of a very collaborative approach of the government along with stakeholders.
India has been proactive in the Montreal Protocol implementation. UNDP highlighted achievements of the country and the new initiatives being taken for the phase down of hydrofluorocarbons, that's HFCs. The 2023 ozone hole has been larger compared to 2022, but there has been significant progress in the current year.
India, I'm pleased to say, has been at the forefront of implementing the Montreal Protocol. It has exceeded its initial goal of reducing hydrofluorocarbons by 60% by 2023 and has achieved 63% reduction.
To create awareness among the students to protect the ozone layer, competition in the categories of poster and slogan writing were organized for school children across the country.
For the ozone layer, I think new R&D is happening. We just heard about the new gases that we need to use for refrigeration. And I think the better part is that it's not only the R&D, but it's also the safety of those gases, how it's evolved over a period of time. We've tested them in industry, that those are gases, how they will be actually changed in the ACs, etc. And post that those qualifications have come in, which are training people, and they're available with you.
There were also release of publications and awareness materials. World Ozone Day reminds us that not only is ozone crucial for life on Earth, but that we must continue to protect the ozone layer for future generations. Anil Thomas, DD India, New Delhi.
India's Home Minister Amit Shah on Friday announced that the Andaman and Nicobar Islands capital, Port Blair, has been renamed as Sri Vijayapuram. In a post on X, the Home Minister said the decision to rename the island is inspired, the island capital is inspired by the vision of Prime Minister Modi to free the nation from colonial imprints. And in a post on X, Prime Minister Narendra Modi said the name Sri Vijayapuram honors the rich history and heroic people of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. He also said that the name reflects our commitment to break free from the colonial mindset and celebrate our heritage. India's Defence Research and Development Organization, that's DRDO, has successfully conducted the preliminary automotive trials of the Indian light tank Zorawar on Friday. In the field trials conducted in the desert, the light tank demonstrated exceptional performance, efficiently meeting all its intended objectives. In the initial phase, the tank's firing performance was rigorously evaluated and it achieved the required accuracy on designated targets. And you're watching DD India NewsHour. Time now to get you some sporting updates as well. The funeral of Sven-Göran Eriksson, who was the first foreigner to manage England's soccer team, was held in his small hometown Torsby in Sweden. Eriksson guided teams in Sweden, Portugal and Italy to major trophies before taking on the England job in 2001. Eriksson announced in January that he was terminally ill with pancreatic cancer and spent the rest of the time reconnecting with many of the places and people central to his career. Tributes flowed in from prime ministers, clubs and former players on the news of his demise. The funeral took place in Torsby, a rural town near the border with Norway, and was attended by several hundred people, including David Beckham, with whom he shared a close bond. In a major achievement, football superstar Cristiano Ronaldo record-setting journey continued on and off the field as well. Ronaldo has now amassed 1 billion followers across social media platforms, highlighting his significant global influence. Recently, Al Nassr striker completed a record 900 career goals during a UEFA Nations League match. Ronaldo shared his excitement and gratitude on X, and I quote, "From the streets of Madeira to the biggest stages in the world, I've always played for my family and for you, and now 1 billion of us stand together. You've been with me every step of the way, through all the highs and lows. This journey is our journey, and together we've shown that there are no limits to what we can achieve." And that's all we have in this edition of DD India NewsHour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code that's on the screen to download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India NewsHour.